all this happened when the tame animals were wild. The dog was wild, and the horse was wild, and the cow was wild, and they walked in the wet, wild woods by their wild lones. But the wildest of all the wild animals was the cat. He walked by himself, and all places were alike to him. Of course, the man was wild too. He was dreadfully wild. He didn't even begin to be tame until he met the woman, and she told him that she did not like living in his wild ways. She picked out a nice dry cave, and she lit a nice fire of wood at the back of it, and she said, "Wipe your feet, dear, when you come in, and now we'll keep house." And that night she made a roast of wild mutton flavored with wild garlic and wild pepper. Out in the wet, wild woods, all the wild animals gathered together, where they could see the light of the fire. Then the wild horse stamped his foot and said, "Why have the man and the woman made that great light in that great cave?" Wild Dog lifted up his nose and said, "I will go up and see and look. Cat, come with me." "Ninny," said the cat, "I am the cat who walks by himself. I will not come." "Then we can never be friends again," said Wild Dog, and he trotted off to the cave. But when he had gone a little way, the cat said to himself, "Why should I not go too and see and look and come away at my own liking?" So he slipped after Wild Dog softly, very softly, and hid himself where he could hear everything. When Wild Dog reached the mouth of the cave, he lifted his nose and sniffed the beautiful smell of the roast mutton. And the woman said, "What do you want?" "What is it that smells so good?" Then the woman picked up a roasted mutton bone and threw it to Wild Dog. And Wild Dog gnawed the bone, and he said, "Give me another." "Wild thing, help my man to hunt through the day and guard this cave at night, and I will give you as many roast bones as you need." "Ah," said the cat, listening, "this is a very wise woman, but not so wise as I am." And he went back through the wet, wild woods by his wild lone, but he never told anybody. Out in the wild woods, all the wild animals wondered what had happened to Wild Dog. Wild Horse stamped with his foot and said, "I will go and see. Cat, come with me." "Nanny," said the cat, "I am the cat who walks by himself. I will not come." But all the same, he followed Wild Horse softly, very softly, and hid himself where he could hear everything. When the woman heard Wild Horse, she laughed and said, "Wild thing out of the wild woods, what do you want?"
"Where is Wild Dog?"
"You didn't come here for Wild Dog, but for this good grass." And Wild Horse said, "That's true. Give it to me to eat." "Allow us to ride on your back," said the woman, "and you shall eat the wonderful grass 3 times a day." "Ah," said the cat, listening, "this is a clever woman, but she is not as clever as I am." The next day, Wild Cow came up to the cave, and the cat followed and hid himself, just the same as before. And when Wild Cow promised to give milk to woman every day in exchange for the wonderful grass, the cat went back through the wet wood by his wild lone. But he never told anybody. Next day, the cat walked up to the cave by himself, and he saw the light of the fire, and he smelt the smell of the warm milk the woman had taken from the cow. And the cat said, "I wish to come into your cave." "Then why did you not come on the first night? Go away and walk by yourself." Then the cat pretended to be sorry and said, "Must I never come into the cave, sit by the warm fire, drink the warm white milk?" I will make a bargain with you. If ever I say one word in your praise, you may come into the cave. And if you say 2 words in my praise, said the cat, then, said the woman, you may sit by the fire. And if you say 3 words, said the cat, then, said the woman, you may drink the warm white milk. Next night the cat hid near the cave, and he heard the woman's baby begin to cry. The cat put out his paddy paw and patted the baby on the cheek, and it cooed. And the woman heard him and smiled and said, "A blessing on whoever did that." "It is I," said the cat, "for you have spoken a word in my praise, and now I can sit in your cave for always and for always." But the baby cried again, and the cat ran after the thread on the floor and patted it with his paws till the baby laughed as loudly as it had been crying. The woman smiled and said, "You are a clever cat. You have spoken a second word in my praise, and now I can sit by the warm fire," said the cat. Then a little wee mouse ran across the floor. "Oh," said the woman. The cat made one jump and caught the little mouse. And the woman said, "Oh, 100 thanks." That very minute and second, lo and behold, the cat was lapping up the warm white milk. "You have spoken 3 words in my praise, and now I can drink the warm white milk 3 times a day for always and always. But still I am the cat who walks by himself, and all places are alike to me." "Oh, cat, you're as clever as a man. But remember that your bargain was with me. I don't know what the others will do when they come home." "What is that to me?" said the cat. "If I have my place in the cave by the fire, and my warm white milk 3 times a day." But when the cat has finished, and between times, and when the moon gets up and night comes, he is still the cat that walks by himself, and all places are alike to him. Then he goes out to the wet wild woods, waving his tail and walking by his wild load. In the far-off times, the elephant had no trunk. He had only a bulgy nose as big as a boot, but he couldn't pick anything up with it. But there was one elephant, an elephant's child, who was full of insatiable curiosity, which means he asked ever so many questions. He asked his tall aunt, the ostrich, why her tail feathers grew just so. Oh. He asked his tall uncle, the giraffe, what made his skin spotty. Oh. He asked his broad aunt, the hippopotamus, why her eyes were so red. And he asked his hairy uncle, the baboon, why melons tasted just so. And still he was full of insatiable curiosity. Then one morning, the elephant's child asked a question that he had never asked before. He asked, "What does the crocodile have for dinner?" Said all his uncles and aunts in a dreadful tone. By and by, he came upon Kolokolo Bird, sitting in the middle of a wait-a-bit thorn bush, and he said, "My uncles and aunts told me to hush, but I still want to know what a crocodile has for dinner." "Then," Kolokolo Bird said, "go to the banks of the great grey-green, greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees, and find out." That very next morning, the insatiable elephant's child took 100 pounds of bananas, 100 pounds of sugar cane, and 17 melons, and told all his dear family very politely that he was going to the great grey-green, greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees, to find out what the crocodile has for dinner. He went from Grahamstown to Kimberley, and from Kimberley to Karma's country, and from Karma's country he went east by north, eating bananas, sugarcane, and melons all the time. At last he came to the banks of the great grey-green, greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees, precisely as Kolokolo Bird had said. Now, until that very week and day and hour and minute, this elephant's child had never seen a crocodile, and did not know what one was like. It was all his insatiable curiosity. The first thing that he found was a bicoloured python rock snake curled up upon a rock. "Excuse me," said the elephant's child most politely, "but have you seen such a thing as a crocodile in these curious parts?" "Have I seen a crocodile?" said the bicoloured python rock snake. "I'm sorry to have disturbed you," said the elephant's child very politely, and went on until he trod on what he thought was a log of wood. But it was really the crocodile. "Excuse me," said the elephant's child, "but do you happen to have seen a crocodile in these curious parts?"
Come hither, little one, said the crocodile, for I am a crocodile.
"Then you are the very person I have been looking for all these long days. Will you please tell me what you have for dinner?"
I think today I will begin with elephant's child.
At this, the elephant's child was much annoyed. Then the bicoloured python rock snake came down to the bank and said, "Pull as hard as you can." So the elephant's child sat back on his little haunches and pulled and pulled and pulled. And the crocodile pulled and pulled and pulled. And the elephant's child's nose kept on stretching. And he said, "This is too much for me." The bicoloured python rock snake came down and knotted himself round the elephant's child's hind legs and said, "We will now seriously devote ourselves to a little high tension." So he pulled, and at last the crocodile let go and disappeared into the Limpopo. The elephant's child said thank you to the bicoloured rock snake and went home across Africa, frisking and whisking his new trunk. When he was back with his dear family, his hairy uncle, the baboon, asked him, "What have you done to your nose?" "I've got a new one from the crocodile on the banks of the great grey-green, greasy Limpopo River," said the elephant's child. "It looks very ugly,"
said his hairy uncle. It does, said the elephant's child. But it's very useful. The elephant's child also pulled out his tall aunt's tail feathers, tripped up his tall uncle's giraffe, and blew bubbles into the ear of his broad aunt hippopotamus. But he never let anyone touch the Colo-Colo bird. Ever since that day, all the elephants you will ever see, besides all those you won't, have trunks precisely like the trunk of the elephant's child.
Now, there lived on the banks of the big Wagai River a Neolithic man, whose name was Tegumai Botsuai, and the Neolithic woman called Teshumai Tewingo, and their little Neolithic daughter called Tapimai Metalumai, but whom we know as Taffy. And they lived happily together in their Neolithic cave. As usual, Taffy went carp fishing with her father, Tegumai. Her mother, Teshumai, wanted her to stay at home and help hang up hides to dry on the big drying poles. But Taffy slipped away quite early to where Tegumai was fishing, and she took out a marrowbone and sat very quiet while Tegumai fished. Then she said, "Dad, I've thought of a secret surprise. You make a noise, any sort of noise." "Ah," said Tegumai. "Will that do to begin with?" "Yes," said Taffy. "You look just like a carp fish with its mouth open. Say it again, please." "What for?" said Tegumai. "It's part of my secret surprise." "Oh, do say ah again, Dad, and keep your mouth open at the end. I'm going to draw a carp fish's mouth wide open." And she took a shark's tooth and scratched away on a piece of bark. "Why?" said Tegumai. "Don't you see?" said Taffy. "When I draw a carp fish with its mouth open, it will remind you of that ah noise." "Really?" said Tegumai, and he went on with his fishing. "Oh, bother," said Taffy. "I can't draw all of a carp fish, just its mouth." "That's not bad," said Tegumai. "But you've forgotten the feeler that hangs across its mouth." So Taffy drew in a carp's feeler. "Now make another noise," said Taffy, very proud. "Yeah," said Tegumai. Said Taffy. "That's a mixture of noises." "Why don't you draw another bit of the carp fish?" said Tegumai, becoming quite excited himself. "I'll draw his tail," said Taffy. "A good notion," said Tegumai. "Remember, I can't draw. Will it do if I just draw the split part of the tail?" Tegumai nodded. "Now make another noise," said Taffy. "Oh," said Tegumai. "That's quite easy," said Taffy. "You made your mouth all round like an egg, so an egg will do for that." And she drew an egg. "My gracious," said Taffy. "What a lot of noise pictures we've made. Carp mouth, carp tail, and egg. Now make another noise, Dad." "Shh," said Tegumai, who was trying to fish. "That's quite easy too,"
said Taffy. Eh? What? No, no. I meant I was fishing and didn't want to be disturbed.
It's a noise just the same. It's the noise a snake makes when it doesn't want to be disturbed. Let's make the noise a snake. And if you draw it on a tree by the river when you're fishing, I'll know you want me to walk quietly so as not to shake the banks.
Perfectly true, said Tegelmai. There's more in this game than you think. I've a notion that Tegelmai's daughter has hit upon the finest thing that ever was. We found out the big secret of the world. Why? Said Taffy. I'll show you. What is the word for swamp water in our language? Water you mustn't drink.
Yo, of course.
Suppose you saw this scratched by the side of a pool, cried Tegelmai.
Carp tail and round egg, yo, bad water. Of course, I wouldn't drink it. And still it will be just the same as if you stood there and said, "Go away, Taffy, or you'll get fever."
And she danced all round him. Then they heard Teshumai calling. They were late for their supper. So they went home. That evening, Tegelmai watched Taffy lying on the floor of the cave drawing R's and O's. And they giggled together till Teshumai said, "Really, Tegelmai, you're worse than my Taffy."
Please don't mind, said Taffy. It's only a secret surprise. We'll tell you all about it the very minute it's done.
Bright and early next morning, Tegelmai and Taffy went up onto the cliff above the river so that they could think about their new sound pictures in secret. So means food.
Yes, snake and egg. That means dinner's ready.
My winky, said Tegelmai. So means come and have dinner, but show means drying poles where we hang our hides.
Horrid old drying poles, said Taffy.
We must make a new picture for show.
I think I'd better draw a picture of the horrid drying poles after the snake and make quite sure there's no mistake, said Taffy. Do some more noises.
Shoo, said Tegelmai, looking up. That means sky. Taffy drew the snake and the drying poles and a round egg without a top to make ooh. Then Tegelmai took a shark's tooth and scratched on a tree, shoo-yo.
Sky, water,
said Taffy.
That's rain. Why, it's raining.
Of course, said Tegelmai. And I told you without saying a word. Soon they'd drawn all the picture sounds that they wanted. And there was the alphabet all complete. And they went home to tell Teshumai their secret. And that was the way it was. Just so, a long time ago, on the banks of the Wagai River. In the sea, once upon a time, there was a whale who ate fishes. He ate the starfish and the garfish. And the crab and the dab. And the plaice and the dace. And the skate and his mate, and the mackerel, and the pickerel, and the twirly-whirly eel. All the fishes he could find in the sea, he ate with his big mouth, until there was only one small fish left in all the sea. He was a small, 'stute fish. and he swam a little behind the whale's right ear, so as to be out of harm's way. Then the whale stood up on his tail and said,
I'm hungry.
and the small 'stute fish said in a small voice,
Noble and generous cetacean, have you ever tasted man?
No.
said the whale.
What is it like?
Nice, said the small 'stute fish. Nice, but nubbly,
Then fetch me some.
said the whale. One at a time is enough, said the 'stute fish. Swim to latitude 50 north, longitude 40 west. You will find, sitting on a raft in the middle of the sea, with nothing on but a pair of braces. You must not forget the braces, and a jackknife, one shipwrecked mariner, who, it is only fair to tell you, is a man of infinite resource and wisdom. So the whale swam and swam to latitude 50 north, longitude 40 west, as fast as he could swim. And on a raft in the middle of the sea with nothing to wear except a pair of canvas breeches, a pair of braces, and a jackknife, he found one single solitary shipwrecked mariner trailing his toes in the water. Then the whale opened his mouth back and back, and he swallowed the shipwrecked mariner, and the raft he was sitting on, and his canvas breeches, and the braces, and the jackknife. He swallowed them all down into his warm, dark inside cupboards. But as soon as the mariner, a man of infinite resources and wisdom, found himself truly inside the whale's warm, dark inside cupboards, he stumped and he jumped, and he thumped and he bumped, and he pranced and he danced and he banged and he clanged, and he hit and he bit, and he leaped and he creeped and he prowled and he howled, and he hopped and he dropped and he cried, and he sighed, and he crawled and he bawled, and he stepped and he leapt, and he danced hornpipes where he shouldn't. And the whale felt most unhappy indeed.
You big, fat, foul-mouthed, horrible guy. I won't be you miserable, big, foul-mouthed whale.
So he said to the 'stute fish,
This man is very nubbly, and besides, he's making me hiccup. What shall I do?
Tell him to come out.
said the 'stute fish. So the whale called down his own throat to the shipwrecked mariner.
Come out and behave yourself. I've got the hiccups.
You horrible, great, big, foul-mouthed.
Nay, nay, said the mariner. I won't be doing that. Take me to my natal shore and the white cliffs of Albion, and I might think about it. And he began to dance more than ever.
Oh, come out of here.
You'd better take him home, said the 'Stute Fish. I ought to have warned you that he is a man of infinite resource and wisdom. So the whale swam and swam,
Oh, come and get me.
and at last he saw the mariner's natal shore with the white cliffs of Albion. While the whale was swimming, the mariner took his jackknife and cut up the raft into a little square grating, which he tied firm, good and tight in the whale's throat. The whale swam to the edge of the beach and opened his mouth wide. The mariner stepped out onto the shingle and went home to his mother, and he married and lived happily ever after. So did the whale. But from that day on, the grating in his throat prevents him from eating anything except very, very small fish. The 'Stute Fish went and hid himself in the mud at the equator. He was afraid that the whale might be angry with him.